My parents called my wedding a disgrace, said I was ruining my life. But the moment they saw who I was marrying live on national TV, their silence said everything. My name is Lily Anderson, and I'm 30 years old. And if there's one thing you should know about me, it's this. I stopped trying to prove my worth to my family a long time ago. At least, I thought I did. I didn't grow up in a poor family, but I didn't grow up in a supportive one either. In our house, everything was about appearances, reputation, status, what people thought, and my parents made that very clear from a young age. Image matters, my mother would always say. People judge everything. And my father, he believed success had a very specific look. High-paying job, prestigious connections, perfect relationships. Anything outside of that was a disappointment. My older brother fit that image perfectly. Corporate job, expensive suits, the kind of life my parents could proudly talk about at every gathering. Me? I chose something different. I became a documentary filmmaker. Not glamorous, not predictable, and definitely not something my parents could easily explain to their friends. It's not stable, my father would say. It's not serious, my mother would add. But I loved it. I loved telling stories. I loved capturing real moments. I loved creating something meaningful. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was living for myself, not for them. That should have been enough. But with my family, it never was. When I told them I was getting married, their reaction wasn't excitement. It was concern, suspicion, judgment. Who is he? My mother asked immediately. His name is Daniel, I said. What does he do? My father added. I hesitated for a second. Not because I didn't know, but because I knew what would happen next. He's in business, I replied. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. Because Daniel wasn't just in business. He owned businesses, multiple, large ones. But I had learned something important. If I told them that too soon, they wouldn't see him. They would see his status. And I didn't want that. I wanted this to be about something real, something honest. But my parents didn't see it that way. In business isn't an answer, my father said sharply. It's enough for me, I replied calmly. That didn't go over well. Over the next few weeks, the tension only grew. They asked questions, pushed for details, tried to dig into his background. And every time I gave them a simple answer, they grew more frustrated. You're hiding something, my mother accused one evening. I'm not, I said. I'm just not turning this into a checklist. This is your future, my father snapped. We have a right to know who you're marrying. I looked at him, calm, steady. You have a right to be part of my life, I said, but not to control it. That was the moment everything shifted, because in their eyes, I had crossed a line. A few days later, my mother called me, her voice tight, controlled. We've been thinking, she said. I already knew where this was going. If you go through with this wedding, she continued, we won't support it. Silence. Heavy, but not surprising. I didn't ask you to, I replied quietly. Another pause, longer this time. Lily, don't do this, she said. You're making a mistake. I'm making a choice, I corrected. My father's voice came in next. You're embarrassing this family, he said. There it was, the word that mattered most to them. Embarrassment. Not happiness. Not love. Image. They don't even know him, I thought to myself. But that didn't matter. Because in their minds, not knowing was enough to judge. We won't be there, my mother said finally. Simple. Final. And just like that, they made their decision. They called my wedding a disgrace. And they chose not to come. I wish I could say that didn't hurt. But it did. More than I expected. Because no matter how much I told myself I didn't need their approval, a part of me still wanted it, still hoped for it. But I didn't let that stop me. The wedding went ahead. Small, private, meaningful, just the way I wanted it. And Daniel, he stood beside me the entire time, calm, supportive, never once making it about anything other than us. And for the first time, I felt completely certain, completely at peace. But what my parents didn't know was that this wasn't just a wedding. It was also something else, something bigger. Because 2 days later, the entire ceremony was going to be aired on national television. And when they saw it, when they saw him, everything they thought they knew was about to change. 2 days after the wedding, I was sitting in our living room, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the silence from my family. No messages, no calls, nothing. It shouldn't have bothered me. They had made their decision. They didn't come. They called it a disgrace. That should have been the end of it. But silence like that, it lingers. Daniel walked in, setting 2 cups of coffee on the table. "You okay?" he asked. I gave a small nod. "I will be," I said. He sat beside me, calm as always. Daniel never pushed, never demanded explanations. He just stayed. And that steadiness, it grounded me more than anything else. "Today's the day," he said after a moment. I looked at him. "Yeah," I replied. Today was the broadcast, the documentary segment I had been working on for months, a feature about unconventional love stories, real relationships, real choices. And somehow, our wedding had become part of it. Not staged, not scripted, just real. But what made it different was Daniel, because while I had kept things simple with my parents, the world knew something else entirely. Daniel wasn't just in business. He was one of the youngest CEOs behind a multi-billion-dollar company. And tonight, that truth would be seen by everyone, including my parents. "You didn't tell them," Daniel said gently. It wasn't a question. I shook my head. "No," I said. "Why?" he asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Because I wanted them to see me first," I replied. "Not what comes with you." He nodded, like he understood. "Because he did. They'll see everything tonight," he said. "Yes," I answered quietly. And I didn't know how to feel about that. Not excitement. Not fear. Something in between. Because this wasn't just about revealing the truth. It was about what that truth would mean. The broadcast started at 8. I didn't watch it right away. I couldn't. Instead, I sat there, letting it happen somewhere else. Letting the world see something my own family had rejected. About 20 minutes in, my phone lit up. Unknown number. I stared at it, then answered, "Hello?" Silence for a second. Then, "Lily?" My chest tightened instantly. My mother. I hadn't heard her voice since before the wedding. "Hi," I said quietly. Another pause. Longer this time. "We're watching it," she said. I could hear something in her voice. Something I wasn't used to. Not anger. Not judgment. Uncertainty. "And?" I asked. I didn't sound emotional. But inside, everything was waiting. "We didn't know," she said slowly. There it was. The first crack. "What didn't you know?" I asked. That he," she hesitated. I didn't help her, didn't fill the silence. Because this moment, it mattered. "He's that Daniel?" she finally said. I closed my eyes briefly. "Yes," I replied. Silence. Heavy. Processing. Because now, they were seeing everything. The scale, the reality, the truth they had dismissed without even asking. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. There was no accusation this time. Just confusion. "Would it have changed anything?" I asked calmly. She didn't answer immediately, because she knew it would have. "Everything. You let us believe," she started. "I let you decide without knowing," I interrupted gently. Another silence. Longer. Because now, she was realizing something deeper. This wasn't about money. It was about judgment. They had made a decision without understanding the situation, without trusting me. We thought, she began. You thought I was making a mistake, I finished. Yes, she admitted quietly. And now? I asked. Another pause. Then, now I think we were wrong. Those words. I had waited years to hear something like that, but hearing them now didn't feel the way I imagined. Because it came after rejection, not before. My father's voice came through in the background, asking questions, trying to understand what they were seeing. Is your father there? I asked. Yes, my mother said. There was movement, a shift, then his voice. Lily, simple, direct, but not sharp, not this time. Hi, I said. Silence. Then, why didn't you tell us who he really was? He asked. I didn't hesitate. Because I wanted you to care about who I chose, I said. Not what he could offer. Silence. Again. But this silence was different. Because now, they didn't have an argument. They had a realization. We need to talk, he said finally. I looked at Daniel. He was watching me quietly, not interfering. Just present. We can talk, I said, but not tonight. Why not? My father asked. Because tonight isn't about fixing things, I replied. A pause. Then what is it about? He asked. I took a slow breath, understanding what you did. Silence. And for the first time, they didn't push back. They didn't argue. Because now, they were seeing everything. Not just the wedding. Not just Daniel. But me. And what they had almost lost. But the truth is, that realization didn't end anything. It started something. Because what they did next would decide whether this was just shock or real change. After that call, I turned the TV on. For the first time that night, I didn't plan to. But something inside me needed to see it. Not just hear about it. See what they were seeing. See what the world was seeing. The screen lit up with the documentary, soft music, slow cuts, real stories. And then it shifted to us, to my wedding. I watched myself walk down the aisle. Simple dress, no crowd of family behind me, no parents, just me. And yet, I didn't look alone. I looked calm, certain, stronger than I remembered feeling that day. The camera cut to Daniel, standing there, waiting. Not just confident, grounded, present. Then the voiceover started, talking about choices. About building a life based on values, not expectations. About choosing love, even when it comes with consequences. I felt something in my chest tighten. Because this was my story, but told in a way I had never fully allowed myself to see. Then came the moment. The part they were reacting to. The reveal. The narrator's voice shifted slightly. And sometimes, the person the world misunderstands, a pause, is standing beside someone the world already knows. The screen cut to Daniel again. But this time, not as my groom. As himself. Clips, interviews, headlines, his company, his achievements, his name, clear, recognizable, unavoidable. The contrast was intentional, deliberate, and powerful. I didn't look at Daniel beside me. I kept my eyes on the screen because I knew what this meant. For the audience, for my family, for everything they had assumed. The footage shifted again, back to our vows, back to that quiet moment, when none of that mattered, when it was just us, and I realized something then, something I hadn't fully understood before. This wasn't about proving anything, not to them, not to anyone, because the truth was, even if Daniel had been no one, I still would have chosen him, and that's what they failed to see. My phone buzzed again. This time, messages. Multiple. From relatives. From people who hadn't spoken to me in months. Is that really your husband? We just saw the broadcast. Why didn't you tell anyone? I scrolled through them slowly, not responding. because the pattern felt familiar. Interest, attention, curiosity, all triggered by one thing: status. And that didn't feel good. It felt empty. Then another call. My brother. I almost didn't answer. But I did. Hello? Lily, what is going on? He asked immediately. His tone wasn't angry. It was shocked, confused. You're watching it? I asked. Everyone is watching it, he said. You're trending. Of course I was. But that didn't matter. Is it true? He asked. I didn't respond right away, because I knew what he meant. Not about the wedding, about Daniel. Yes, I said. Silence. Then, you married him? He said. I could almost hear him trying to process it. Yes. Another pause. Longer. Then his tone shifted. Completely. That's incredible, he said. I closed my eyes for a second, because there it was. The change. Instant. Effortless. Based on one thing. Not me. Not my happiness. Not my choices. Just who I married. You didn't think it was incredible before, I said quietly. He didn't answer immediately, because he knew. You made it sound like, he started. Like what? I asked. Like it wasn't a big deal, he admitted. It wasn't, I said. To me, silence. Because that answer didn't match what he was seeing now. We need to talk, he said finally. Same words, different voice, different intention. Why? I asked. Because this changes things, he said. There it was. Clear, honest, and exactly what I expected. I let a small breath out. No, I said. It doesn't. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, the only thing that changed is what you see, I replied. Silence. Because that truth was hard to argue with. I'm still the same person, I continued. The same one you all judged. No response. Because now, he didn't have one. We'll talk later, he said after a moment. But it didn't sound like certainty. It sounded like adjustment. Like he needed time to catch up. We ended the call shortly after, and I set my phone down. The documentary was still playing. The final scenes now. Smiles. Moments. Quiet happiness. No drama. No conflict. Just truth. And I realized something then. They didn't reject me because I was wrong. They rejected me because I didn't fit their expectations. And now, that I did. In a way, they understood. Everything felt different to them, but not to me, because I had already made my choice. Before the cameras, before the reveal, before their approval, and what they did next would decide whether they were reacting to the moment or finally understanding the meaning behind it. The night of the broadcast didn't end with celebration. It ended with silence. Not the same silence from before, cold, distant, dismissive. This one felt heavier, like something was shifting underneath it. The next morning, I woke up to my phone lighting up nonstop. Messages, missed calls, notifications. People I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly reaching out. We saw you on TV. Why didn't you tell us? Your husband is incredible. I scrolled through them slowly, and the more I read, the more one thing became obvious. They weren't reaching out because they cared. They were reaching out because they were impressed. And there's a difference. A big one. Daniel walked into the room, still calm as ever. Busy morning? He asked with a small smile. You could say that, I replied. He glanced at my phone. Fame suits you, he joked lightly. I shook my head. It's not fame, I said. It's attention. He nodded. Like he understood exactly what I meant. Because he did. Your parents called again, he added. I looked up. When? Earlier, he said. I didn't answer. Good, I replied. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Because I wasn't ready yet. And for once, I wasn't going to rush just because they finally decided to show up. A few hours later, there was a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Daniel looked at me. I looked at him. We both already knew who it was. When I opened the door, there they were, my parents, standing there, together, not dressed up, not formal, just present. And something about that felt different. "Lily," my mother said softly. I didn't move aside immediately. Not out of pettiness, just instinct. Because this moment mattered. "Can we come in?" my father asked. I hesitated, just for a second, then stepped back. "Okay," I said. They walked in slowly, looking around, taking in the space, taking in the life I had built without them. Daniel greeted them politely, calm, respectful, the same way he always was. And I watched closely, because this was the real test, not the TV, not the public reaction. This, face to face, no audience, no image to protect, just truth. We sat down. Silence filled the room for a moment. Then my mother spoke. "We saw everything," she said. I nodded. I figured. Another pause. Then, "We were wrong," my father said. Direct, clear, no hesitation. I looked at him, really looked, because those words carried weight, but they also needed meaning. "About what?" I asked. He didn't avoid it. "About you," he said. "About your choices. About your wedding." Silence. Because this wasn't something I had ever heard from him before. Not like this. Not without conditions. Not without explanation. "We judged too quickly," he continued. "We didn't take the time to understand." "That's true," I said. Calm, not emotional, just honest. My mother looked down briefly, then back at me. "We thought you were making a mistake," she said. "I know," I replied. "But we didn't trust you," she added. That one mattered more than anything else, because it was deeper, more real, and harder to admit. "No," I said. "You didn't." Silence again, but this silence wasn't defensive. It was reflective. And that was new. My father leaned forward slightly. "We want to fix this," he said. There it was, the intention. But intentions aren't enough. "How?" I asked. Simple question, but not an easy one. They looked at each other, then back at me. "We want to be part of your life," my mother said. I nodded slowly. "But?" I asked. Because there was always a but before. This time, there wasn't. "No conditions," she said quietly. That surprised me more than anything else so far. "No expectations," my father added, "and no judgment." I held their gaze, because this moment was everything. Years of patterns, years of behavior, all coming down to this. And I had a choice, to accept it, to reject it, or to redefine it. "I'm not the same person you remember," I said. "We know," my father replied. "And I'm not going to go back to how things were," I continued.